In ancient times, gladiators were no more than some ancient text-written legends, and people rarely knew about the lives of gladiators. Most people knew them from old books and ancient age stories. But the 18th century discoveries of Herculaneum and Pompeii give historians a better understanding of who the gladiators were, how they lived, how they fought, and how they died. In general, the life of a gladiator was harsh and often short, and most of them fought only once or twice a year in front of screaming, savage crowds. So aside from their fights and entertaining Roman people, do you have any idea of what they did the rest of the time? I guess not. Well, today you will witness the daily life of gladiators in ancient Rome. So buckle up, and let's get started. Gladiators were armed combatants who were often pushed to entertain the public in the Roman Empire. They fought those bloody clashes in the gruesome Colosseum, where they were forced to fight against other gladiators, wild animals, and condemned criminals. Regardless of their origin, gladiators provided spectators with an example of Roman martial ethics by fighting or dying well. In those times, being a gladiator wasn't that easy, but the rewards were worth the risk, even for those who weren't forced to fight. Most of the gladiators fought for glory, and I'm sure you have heard many names like the mighty Magnus, because they knew that after their victory, people would wear their names with high esteem. Their portraits would be displayed in public places. Children would create their clay statues, and the best fighters even could endorse products. For their hunky physiques and high-caliber fighting, gladiators were idolized by Roman women, who considered their sweat to be an aphrodisiac. So, how did those gladiators live? Despite the glory and fame, the average gladiator life was kind of ugly. Because the majority of them were slaves, they were locked up in their cells at night, only to be awoken at the crack of dawn each morning. As they were seen as valuable goods, their hygiene and food were better than the average person meal. However, they were kept deprived from the freedom to enjoy those extra things. They were even not allowed to talk during meals, and those who weren't training were chained. Most gladiators ate 3 decent meals per day, including meat, fish, cereal, eggs, veggies, cheese, and goat milk, with water being the only drink. Even free fighters were shackled and slept in cells. They were only allowed to leave their cells for mealtimes and training. Gladiators had to be extremely fit, but most of them had some padding around the midsection to secure sensitive organs from minor wounds. The typical Roman games schedule included more than just gladiatorial contests. Unlike enslaved people, free gladiators had better living conditions and were given more freedom, including the ability to leave their homes whenever they wanted. The morning time was packed with animal-related activities, ranging from hunting to feeding condemned criminals to beasts. However, the real thrills came in the afternoon, when professional gladiators faced off in one-to-one combat, fighting until one of them was no more or so badly injured that they had to accept defeat. A gladiator training routine was often rigorous. They had to spend many hours each day practicing with wooden swords twice as heavy as real metal ones and shields. Their muscles had grown to the point where their bones were deformed. In the arena, the only difference between life and death could be determined by endurance, strength, and good understanding of how an opponent will fight and strike. A new gladiator would typically train for a year or more before his first professional bout. The gladiators were fed a mostly vegetarian diet because their intense training burned a lot of calories. The gladiator diet was different from a regular person in many ways. While most Romans ate wheat bread, gladiators ate mostly barley. They would mix some fruits and vegetables with a lot of barley porridge. The main purpose was to have an extra layer of fat covering sensitive blood vessels and nerves, so that a shallow cut from the rival wouldn't be potentially lethal. Normally, the gladiators would fight only 3 to 5 times each year. A banquet was held the night before an event for combatants, who were told to enjoy themselves because it might be their last delight meal. In some cases, most gladiators did not fight to the death, which was little contrary to the conception in their so-called rules. Some historians believe less than 20% of them died in the arena. In the arena, 2 things could happen. A stalemate could be declared if the audience became bored by a long drawn-out affair, or both warriors could leave if their brave battle wowed the audience before killing one of them. When a gladiator was outmatched and was about to face defeat, the audience could decide whether he should live or not. The wounded person would sometimes raise his finger requesting to be spared, but the crowd could yell for his death if they felt he didn't fight hard enough. If the emperor was present, it was customary for him to have the final say. In addition, the thumbs down signal did not always imply death. A thumbs up could have meant death, whereas a thumbs down or clenched fist with 2 fingers extended could have meant mercy. Despite their courage and fighting abilities, the gladiators were still considered social outcasts. A gladiator was just like a prostitute. He was considered as an infamous person of low reputation. He could not vote or hold public office, and many cemeteries refused to accept gladiators' remains. Some gladiators were free men and were paid handsomely to make agreement with a ludus for a certain amount of time, usually 4 or 5 years. During the contract term, they were treated as slaves by the ludus, swearing the gladiator oath to submit to whatever the ludus owner desired, including having them killed. These volunteer gladiators were known as octorati. Women gladiators have been depicted in mosaics and listed as special attractions, despite the vast majority of gladiators were men. Many gladiators married and raised families, as evidenced by memorial stones in gladiator cemeteries. The names of those gladiators were carved on the stones and the number of fights that they won. Many died in battles, some died in their 20s or early 30s. Whatever the reason was, gladiators will never be forgotten in the pages of history. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope this video was informative and entertaining. What story do you want to hear next? Leave your suggestions in the comments section. Have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next video.